This is the Haulin Assets podcast, where we show you how to start and run your own trucking company. Ever wanted to go out on your own? Follow Chris as he goes through the highs and lows of running on his own authority. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to the Haulin Assets podcast. This is episode number 93. We're talking about being better this year. Okay, now, I'm Craig, your host. That's probably important to know. Over there, that's Chris. Hi, Chris.
I'm here again. You can't get rid of me.
Indeed. Now, we talked recently about goals for 2022, and so somebody might be saying, well, didn't you already cover this topic, be better for this year? But today is a little bit different, Chris, and we're going to talk about why that is and, what you have in store. But first things first, how's life? How's trucking, Chris?
Trucking is good, although it seems like it's been a weird winter. We had what seemed like a really kind of warm fall, and then the last month or so, this weather's just knocking me out. Yeah, I think I-80, it seems to me like I-80 in Wyoming has been closed more already this year than it normally is. I don't know if it's just because it has been closed more or just we have more trucks running, and so we run up against it being closed more often, but it's been tough. Like right now, we've got 2 trucks sitting in Wyoming waiting to get through. I think they'll get through today, but just high winds and bad storms. And
I've been there. Last year, I got stuck in Laramie. Nobody wants to get stuck in Laramie unless you live there. I'm sure it's a lovely place, but you don't want to be stuck there. And I was stuck there for like 6 hours, and eventually they said, "No, you're not going to Utah today or tomorrow." And so I went back through Colorado and ended up taking the
70.
Yeah, the 70 route. It was rough.
I-80 gets bad. That section that you're talking about, Laramie, Elk Mountain.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's just the winds and the snow and the drifts. It's a tough section in the winter.
Well, anyway, anything else you want to talk about this week before we get into our subjects?
I've got 2 things, because today's subject's really not it's not trucking specific. I mean, it kind of can relate to about anybody, and I think it's kind of it's a cool sentiment and something that kind of impacted me, and we'll get into it a little bit why as the episode goes on. But before we get into that, I got an update on Truck 5.
Oh, you do?
Yes.
Awesome. What's going on?
It is done with manufacturing, and it's at least on its way en route to Salt Lake. I haven't gotten an update in the last couple of days, so there's a chance it might already be here, but we're getting close. I think we're within a week or 2 of getting that truck on the road.
Very nice.
Yeah, that's exciting.
So the goal, as I recall, was to get this one on the road by the end of last year.
Well, it was
right?
supposed to be delivered the 15th of November.
Oh, wow.
And then that's when we got it's going to be 14 to 60 days delayed because of the computer chip.
I remember that.
And we're just waiting on a computer chip.
I love it. 14 to 60 days is one of my favorite windows I've ever heard of.
Yeah, it's pretty big. You think they'd be able to narrow it down a little bit better than that. But it ended up being closer to the 60 days. It's probably going to be a good 50. Yeah, it might be close to 60 by the time we actually get it.
That's amazing.
I think we're already at right about 50 days.
Yeah.
Yeah, so should have Truck 5 here in the next couple weeks, hopefully.
And which means we should have an update on how that's going for people who are interested to hear. So
we'll keep everybody posted. That's exciting.
Awesome. So anything else in the news you want to talk about?
Yeah, I want to. Do you hear the kind of the hoopla that's been going on with the Colorado truck driver that got sentenced to 110 years in prison?
I've only seen a few headlines. I haven't actually dug into it, so I'm interested to hear what's going on, what's happening.
It's been super interesting because I think it was last year or the year before. Well, I guess now that we're in 2022, it may have been 2 years ago. He was driving his truck 85 miles an hour, lost the brakes, and created an accident that I think it killed 4 or 5 people.
Wow.
So quite a few people.
This was in Colorado?
In Colorado.
Okay.
And because the Colorado laws are obviously something's wrong with them, he got sentenced to 110 years in prison.
Wow.
For, something there was some negligence involved, some other things, but ultimately not like criminal intent type of activity. And you see people that, criminally intend to do harm that don't get nearly that bad of a sentence.
So it's not like there's no culpability. It's just that 110 years was maybe overdoing it a bit.
Yeah, a little excessive. And even the judge that sentenced him alluded to that. And so anyway, there's been protests, like the trucking organizations, not necessarily like not government organizations or associations or anything have been, but other, trucking groups have tried to boycott Colorado, and there's been protests from both the trucking industry and outside the trucking industry supporting this driver and the ridiculousness of the sentence. So anyway, what's ended up happening is the governor commuted his sentence to 10 years.
Oh, okay.
Which is a lot more reasonable. And that has some controversy in and of itself. But there was some, he should get some kind of
punishment.
Yeah, because there was some negligence on his part. The trucking company itself probably should get some, because, when it sounds like they'd had a history of maintenance issues on their vehicles. But the driver also kind of misrepresented his experience on his application, and he's going down a I-70. That's a pretty steep hill. You mentioned driving it, and he was going, I think, 85 miles an hour in a place that's marked 45 for trucks.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, and so he just couldn't stop, and he'd probably overheated his brakes. And
so 110 would be a lot, but nothing would be way too little.
Yeah. So, it just, there's some negligence here on the trucking company side. And the reason that I bring this up is that's why it's important to maintain your trucks well, so that,
and vet your drivers,
maybe not just rely on what they say they have as far as experience, but find some other way to kind of prove it, and do a road test. And
that was one of your things that you talked about when you were hiring drivers, and we did an episode or two on that, was call the references.
Yeah.
Okay, great, they provided references, and so many employers just say, "Oh, excellent, he has references. I won't even bother to call the references."
And and like there's some telling signs or some things on this guy, like specifically he'd had most of experience in Texas, flat, and he'd mostly driven intrastate in Texas, so not dealing with the mountains that you get in Colorado,
right?
And just maybe didn't have the experience he needed to negotiate a steep decline or descent like that one is.
Right. There, you ever hear the joke about West Texas? Speaking of no mountains out there. In West Texas, it's like God took a belt sander to the earth and then didn't even bother to clean up the dust.
That's funny.
All right. So, Chris, we should move on to our topic for today, I think. Before we do, I do want to recommend that people go to haulinassetsllc.com to check out full show notes. I also recommend that you leave us a review if you like the show. If you don't, then, don't. 5-star reviews only. That's all we accept. Okay, we have no say over that, but please leave a review if you enjoy the show, and go check out the YouTube channel. If you're listening on the podcast, we're glad you're there. You can have the exact same experience enhanced with Chris's massive biceps on the YouTube channel. So those military arms, right, Chris?
They're because I eat too much.
That's what that is. Oh, okay. So now I know what I need to do.
Yeah, it's just food.
Okay.
Packing the food.
We do put these episodes on YouTube. So if you're actually sitting down, you've got a computer at hand and you want to check out, us while we're talking, you can do that. So yeah, please go do that. It's your support wherever you give it is much appreciated. All right, Chris, what is our topic for today? You said be better this year.
Yeah, so it's kind of a loaded sentence, and there's a lot more meaning to it than what is kind of on the surface, and that's what we're going to kind of get into. I spend a lot of time driving and commuting. Also, I try to exercise, and what most of my exercise is running, and so I'll listen to different types of media, podcasts, books on tape, that kind of thing, when I'm driving or when I'm running. And I was listening to one in the last week or so. It was put on by Harvard Business Review. Now, doesn't that sound nerdy?
I love Harvard Business Review, and that's not a joke.
It's pretty good. I don't know if you've listened to this podcast or not. It's actually a best of. It's December. They're doing a repeat so that everybody can take a little bit extra time off. And anyway, so this is one that they kind of repeated on their podcast that's called IdeaCast. And it was an interview of a gal named Heidi Grant, and she talked about an article that she had written for the Harvard Business Review a while back that's called 9 Things Successful People Do Differently. And I'll include the link for this, and I'm also going to talk about a YouTube video. Those both those links will be in the show notes, so you can go look at them. But again, it's a really interesting and cool article, 9 Things Successful People Do Differently. And the article starts with a little blurb that says, research on achievement suggests that successful people reach their goals not simply because of who they are, but more often because of what they do. And that's a lot of the times different than what you hear. A lot of times people say, I'm kind of born into my situation. And I believe there is some validity to that. I think it's harder to, when you talk about, breaking through from one class to another, it's not easy to do. But also, there's a lot of research that says that, for the most part, most people are where they are because of what they do, not necessarily because of who they are, what they were born
who they
into.
know, something like that. Okay.
Yeah. And that kind of leads me to believe, I say this all the time, like if you're wanting to own a trucking company and you don't believe that you can control your fate, you can control your success, then you probably shouldn't own a trucking company.
Right.
And that kind of goes
at least to
along.
some degree, right? I mean, what you said still holds. There is some validity to the, your starting point and that sort of thing. But you do have some control, a large measure of control.
You do. And you don't control everything. There's bumps in the road that can happen that are outside of your control. But my point is that if you don't believe that you can significantly impact, whether you're successful or not, then don't own a trucking company, because it's not gonna go well for you.
Yeah. Okay. So, all right. So this article that you referenced, you said it was called 9 Successful Things People Do Differently, not just how they think differently or who they know or whatever. Okay. So 9 successful things people do differently.
9 things. Or 9
things successful people
do differently. There we go.
It's early in the morning. Okay, this is weird for us.
We were talking about this is like probably one of the earliest recordings we've ever had, if not the earliest.
Okay, so are we going through all 9 today?
Nope, we're not going to go through all 9. I'll put all 9 in the show notes so that you can see what all 9 are, and I'll kind of highlight the ones that we're going to talk about. But I think we're talking about 5 of them. 3 of them are kind of very related, so it's going to kind of feel more like we're just talking about 3 of them.
Okay. All right. So what's the first one you want to talk about then?
The first one's just kind of a repass or, a redo of the episode that you mentioned at the beginning of the show, the goals for 2022. And she talks about you've got to get specific. And you set specific goals. Like you take, for example, you don't want to say something along the lines of, I want to have more revenue in 2022. You set a specific target, like I want to reach $1 million in revenue in 2022. So, specific. I instead of I want to lose weight, I want to lose 5 pounds.
Right.
You've got a target that you're actually shooting at. And when you do that, your chance of creating a plan to get to where you need to be is much more likely. You've got a hard number. It increases your chance of being successful and the degree to which you're successful.
And Chris, I think you'll be happy to know that episode did affect at least one person. I sat down and made goals for 2022.
Awesome.
And I was very specific about my goals. And I kept it to 3.
Good.
You'd be very proud.
We'll have to talk a little bit more about that. That's awesome. That's good.
Okay, cool. So anything else, like you said, this was kind of something that we talked about in a previous episode. So do you want to dive into this one anymore, or do you want to leave it there?
No, I'm going to leave it at that.
Okay.
So we're going to move on to the next one, which is really, this is kind of where the 3-in-1 is. So kind of in the interest of time, I'm going to kind of cover them all together. But they basically talk about, the first one is grit. And grit, I really like the definition that she uses of grit. And it says the willingness to commit to long-term goals and to persist in the face of difficulty. And I would say this is kind of, when I've thought about grit, I've thought about more just kind of the persistence thing, right? You're willing to tough it out, right? But she specifically says that you commit to long-term goals and persist. So you've got to have those long-term goals. And I would say this is probably in my opinion, the single most important factor that makes people successful, business owners successful, is that kind of that grit, that goal setting and following through with those goals.
Yeah. So when we talk about, you say long-term goals and then persistence in those goals, this would be, there's a lot of jokes and people roll their eyes a little bit when you talk about a 5-year plan. But this is what we're talking about, right? Where do I want to be in 5 years or 10 years or whatever? Is this what we're talking about when we talk about long-term goals?
I would say a long-term goal is a goal that's anything from 1 year. Like when you do your annual planning, I would still consider that a long-term goal, and you definitely need to have those 1-year goals. But then you also need to look at, where do you want to be 3 to 5 years? And you may not get into the specific detail of your 3 to 5 year plan, but your 1-year goals need to help you accomplish those 3 to 5 year goals.
Okay. All right. So yeah, anything else you want to say on grit?
So yeah, a couple things. One is, the gritty, it kind of implies those two things, that you set goals and that you follow through with them. And I actually happen to be, this is where the second media item that I consumed that kind of really got me spurred in thinking about this topic was a speech from one of my heroes.
When did I give a speech? Hang on, I'm trying to remember where I give so
my other
many.
I've got more than one hero. I mean, you're definitely one of them.
Okay,
Craig,
all right.
but, Warren Buffett.
Oh, well, I mean, it's the same thing.
Yeah, I went through a program 5 or 6 years ago. It's called the Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Business Program. That's actually where I kind of developed out the idea for the podcast.
Oh, really? Okay.
It is. And he was giving a speech to, I think it was some of the graduates or just alumni of the Goldman Sachs program. And he said that something all remarkable people have in common is they know they have it in themselves to accomplish things. They know they can get somewhere beyond where they are today, and they are willing to put the time and energies in to better themselves and to better their situation. And I thought that kind of goes right along with this whole gritty thing. And then he tells 2 stories about two businesses that he bought from women that really exhibited this trait. And one of them was it's really fascinating. It's she developed a furniture business that Warren Buffett bought, I think it was back in 1983 for $60 million. And
Wow.
she came to the United States, I think in 1917, not speaking a word of English, with basically like a cord around her neck with Dodge, Iowa written on it. And the Red Cross got her to Dodge, Iowa, where her husband was.
Yeah.
And it just talks about her persistence. And she ended up starting a furniture business. She started with clothes, kind of, a hustler, and eventually built this business that's now, generating billions of dollars a year in revenue.
Amazing.
It's fascinating. So I'm going to include the link obviously for this video as well. I highly recommend you go in and listen to it. Warren Buffett is just such a smart guy in so many things, and they're motivational. I think they're kind of inspiring stories, and he gives some good lessons and wisdom in that. It's about a 20-minute speech, and I think you'd like it.
Nice. Okay.
So that's the grit thing. You have to have it to be successful. But I wouldn't say that if you have it, you will be successful. It's a big, I think the biggest component of success. But you take, for example, you may be as gritty as all get out, but if you're undisciplined with your finances, something's gonna cause you to go under.
Yeah, we're talking about something that is necessary but not sufficient, right?
Yep.
Okay.
That's a great way to put it. You're so smart.
Well, I did make 2022 goals, so I am clearly very
You're
intelligent.
improving. Yeah.
That's right.
And one last thing on grit is, and we're going to talk a little bit more about this in the next item that the next main item that we talk about after we get through these 3, but it's something that can get better over time. That's one of the things that she really pointed out. A lot of people think that, that your grittiness is really something that you're born with, but it is a skill that you can develop.
It's more like a muscle, right?
It's more like a muscle.
Yeah.
Good transition, because our next item of these 3 that are similar is to build your willpower muscle.
Hey, look at me go.
It's like you're a professional.
You'd think so.
Yeah.
Okay, willpower muscle. What's it? Build your willpower muscle. Yeah, and how is that different than grit? That sounds like kind of the same
That's
thing.
why I think they're really similar to me. And your willpower is just, kind of your ability, your self-control, right? It's like any other muscle. You have to exercise it to maintain it. If you don't, you're gonna lose it. And it's just your ability to either be disciplined about not doing something, or like for instance me having the willpower and the discipline not to eat everything that's in front of me, which I fall short on a lot of the times.
I was reading something interesting about this recently, actually, Chris.
Go for it.
Because this idea of self-control. Self-control is not in our nature, in human nature, right? We want the sweets. Yeah. We want, to be lazy. We, all the sex, drugs, and rock and roll. Like that's our nature.
That's right.
And this thing I was reading, the quote, and I don't know, I can find it and put it in the show notes maybe, but the quote is, "You can chase nature out with a pitchfork, but it will always come rushing back in." And so it's like, kind of this idea that you have to maintain yourself in the face of human nature, right? So it's kind of I think that's kind of what you're getting at.
It is. And willpower is like, I think there's two aspects of it. There's the like me and eating, don't do something that you want to do, or drugs, or, those other things that
right.
the human tendency wants to do. And then the other one is to do things that you don't necessarily particularly enjoy. And we've talked about this several times in the podcast of buckling down and doing the things that aren't necessarily the things you enjoy in the business, or the sexy and glamorous things, but the things that really need to be done. So the willpower helps you avoid the things you don't want to do, or you shouldn't do, and do the things that you should but maybe don't want to.
Yeah, maybe that's how these are different. Grit is about doing things, and willpower is about avoiding, like doing the right things versus avoiding the wrong things. I don't know. I'm just trying to find some difference here.
That could be.
Yeah.
Then the third one that's related to this also is just don't tempt fate. Your willpower is limited. Like, you may have the most willpower in the world, but it's not perfect. There are going to be times when you're going to cave in. And so it talks about just don't put yourself in situations where you're going to be tempted. If you're an alcoholic, don't go to the bar, right? If you're a foodie like me, don't spend 10 minutes in the candy aisle at the grocery store.
Sure.
Yeah. So those are the three that are kind of related: the grit, willpower, and don't tempt fate.
Don't tempt yourself, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so what's that means we're on the last one, is that right?
We are on the last one.
Okay.
This is a big one, and I really like this one, and I've started to like it more and more as I've really started to think about it. And this is the one that really kind of got me spurred on doing this episode, because I think it's fascinating. It's something I've never really kind of thought about it this way before, but I think I have a lot of the traits, and I think it's one of the traits that is really a driver that's helped me be successful. And it's focus on getting better rather than being good.
Okay. All right. Okay. I know we're going to dig into this, but now I'm just kind of thinking about it. Okay. So this is similar to don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good, right?
There's some similarities there.
Okay. So what do you mean by this?
So kind of look at it this way. When you're trying to be good at something, you're setting an expectation, right? A performance level or a performance metric that you want to achieve. And then when you make a mistake along the way, it's kind of demoralizing. You feel disappointed, and that increases the pressure on yourself, which creates anxiety and then reduces performance. So instead of focusing on being good or being perfect at something, you always just focus on getting better.
Right.
And you see this in athletes. I'm a big Utah Jazz fan. And
sorry about that, by the way.
Well, whatever. Shut your mouth.
That's all right. Hey, I'm a Seattle Sonics fan, so
that's even the Seattle who? So anyway, like Rudy Gobert, the center for the Utah Jazz, is a great example of this. He came into the league, and he's just consistently worked at getting better and getting better and getting better. And he's talked about in some of his, press interviews and things about how he doesn't put the pressure on himself about comparing himself to others. He's just constantly trying to get better than where he is today. And he's done that on defense through his whole career and has become, the defensive player of the year multiple times. He's And he's kind of starting to do that with offense right now. He's kind of trying to push the limits. He knows he's going to fail, and he accepts that. And I think that's one of the things that's really important, and one of the distinctions of this focus on getting better rather than being good, because it allows you to fail. Failure is part of the process. You're going to make your mistakes, and that's okay. That's part of learning. Whereas if you're trying to be good and you make a mistake, it's, you feel depressed, or you feel like you've messed up.
You get into a vicious cycle, right? Yeah. The anxiety thing you were talking about. I mean, it's to go with the muscle analogy that we had with one of the previous ones. You don't go to the gym and immediately start trying to bench press 200 pounds.
Yeah.
You're going to have to work up from wherever you're at, and you're tearing your muscles apart to build them, right? And so it's an imperfect analogy, but this idea of like, look, expect failure in some of what you do, but if you're willing to learn from it, then that's going to help you keep getting better, right?
Yeah, and I think you've got to think of it as you're making progress rather than trying to be perfect, right out of the gate. And as long as you're getting better and you're improving constantly, you will get to that point where you're good, and you're great at what you do. And I think it's the same in your business. Whether you're talking about you individually or you're talking about your business, if you're just constantly trying to get better every day, every week, every month, it's one of those things that happens over time. It's not going to happen overnight. And I think if you're trying to be good instead of just trying to get better, the expectation is that you've got to be there tomorrow. And that's just not realistic.
Right. Okay. So what if I'm trying to get good or get better? Sorry, Chris. Whew. I'm trying to get better at something that I'm like really not good at. At what point, how do I put this? It's kind of like you were saying earlier, if you're not willing to do this work, if you're not willing to be this kind of person, don't start a trucking company. At some point, do you say, hey, look, this thing that you're trying to get better at, it's not for you. Give up.
Well, that's a great question, and it's probably kind of a hard one to answer. I think that's where, like, if you're starting out at point A and it's something that you're just not good at, it's going to take a long time, and that's where that grit kind of comes in. Is you've got to just say, hey, I really suck at this today, but I look at myself 3 years or 3 months down the road after I've tried to get better, and you should see some progress. I mean, I think in most situations you're gonna see some progress. Like I'm a firm believer that we can get better at about everything that we do, and you may not be, the best athlete in the world. Like, you're a big baseball fan. I'm not gonna. No matter how hard I try or how hard I practice today, I'm not going to be a major league pitcher. Just not going to happen.
I've seen the movie, Chris. It can happen. You never know.
But the point is that you can get better, and you can achieve a level that's going to, be super beneficial to you and your life and your business.
So do you not believe in innate talent? And like, look, I was born a certain way, and I can't change that. I can't fix this about myself. Would you say you can improve on anything?
I would say you can improve on anything. There is innate talent. Like, I don't want to discredit that. There are some people that are really good at things, but there are other people that just, that aren't naturally good at things that become really good at things,
Yeah.
And so I'm a firm believer that you can get really good at just about anything if you put the effort into it, but it's effort. Some people are naturally born that way. Like I feel like in my situation, there are very few things I'm like naturally good at.
Right.
Like, I don't think I have a whole lot of that innate talent, and unless you say grit is one of them. Like, I think that's one of those things I'm probably really, really good at. I've kind of got that grit. I stick with things long term, and that's helped me. And so, I'm a firm believer that you can get better, and you've got some people that are just naturally born that way, and other people that get really good over time. And one isn't necessarily better than the other.
All right. So anything else on this particular subject that you want to go over?
I just kind of, to reiterate it all, is I think, that this focus on getting better, not good, is something I've just naturally kind of evolved into over time. If you looked at me in my 20s, I probably more was just trying to get good. You look at me in my 30s, I think I made a transition to where I really was just focusing on getting better. I didn't care so much about what other people thought about me. And that in and of itself kind of relieves a lot of pressure, kind of does the same thing, that performance anxiety that you get if you're trying to be good. Like if you're trying to impress somebody else, you've kind of feel that same pressure. And so I think, two things that have been huge for me is I'm just constantly trying to get better. I don't really care what other people think. I care about what I think. I care about, am I putting forth my best effort? And I've always felt that if I put forth my best effort and I fail, no big deal. I've learned from it. I've gotten better. And that's kind of, it's liberating.
Hear. I mean, I don't know if I have anything to add to that, honestly. It's unless, no, I don't, I don't have anything to add to that, Chris. No, that's pretty good. So, all right. So does that wrap up our 9 subjects, or 5 really?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So the article again is called what? What was the name of it?
It's called 9 Things That Successful People Do Differently. Something along those lines. Again, I'll include that link in the show notes. Heidi Grant is the author of the article, 9 Things Successful People Do Differently.
Got it. Okay. Well, excellent. That will wrap the main portion of the episode up. I am curious, do we have any impact tips today, Chris?
We do.
Oh, we do. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
I'm ready.
Focus on getting better.
Clearly, it's not about being, lazy.
No.
Yeah. Okay.
So it's just it meshes well with this episode.
There you go.
That's what it is.
Okay. So no, I'm messing with you. Focus on getting better. So your impact tip is the last thing we talked about. Is that right?
Yep.
Okay.
So just focus on getting better. I think for 2022 we talked about goals, and just it's the tortoise and the hare. Be the tortoise. Just consistency and work on getting better. Find something for you personally that will make you better in your business, and then find something you can focus on in your business that you can work on consistently getting better. That's going to make a big impact.
We actually can tie this back again to the goal setting podcast, because if we're talking about focus on getting better, not being good. If you own a business that did $100,000 in revenue this year, then next year your goal is not going to be $2.5 million in revenue, right? That's your 5-year, 10-year plan, right?
Yeah.
Next year it's, hey, I made 100,000. I want to make 175 or 200,000 this year in revenue. So that incremental improvement will be more beneficial over the long term than constantly trying to, push the rock up the hill, right?
Yep.
Like that's impossible to do or whatever. I don't know.
For sure.
Analogies, metaphors, things. I'm confused. It's early in the morning. We should really cut bait and run, shouldn't we, Chris?
Yeah, probably. Focus on getting better.
That's
We'll
right. That's right. Next week, I guess in 2 weeks, we'll have a better episode. Yeah, this is a pretty good one, but I'm sure we can do better. So we will in 2 weeks, Chris. But before we do that, of course, I want to encourage people to go to HaulinAssetsLLC.com, and also they should go to MotorCarrierHQ.com and check out the shirts that they can buy. We have 2 pieces of merch. Oh, hang on, Chris. Do that again. Because now the camera's on you. Yeah. There are Haulin Assets t-shirts, and I can attest they are stylish and comfortable.
There you
go. So, please go check that out. Leave reviews. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. We love all the support that you guys give us. I even pop in on the YouTube channel every now and then and reply to comments for people telling me to cut my hair or whatever. So
I'm glad you're not wearing the man bun today.
I
didn't have enough time this morning
my hair was still wet. Literally, I almost put it up, but I was like, nah, it's too wet to put up in the man bun right now. So, all right. Thanks everybody for listening. Oh,
I got something for you.
Oh, shoot. Oh no. Okay.
Not shoot. So this is kind of funny. My daughter, 17-year-old daughter, I don't know what the deal is. There might be something wrong with her.
That's an excellent way to preface the story, and I'm sure she'll hear this at some point.
She really likes dad jokes. And she laughs her head off at dad jokes. And so my other kids, for her birthday, got her a little book of dad jokes.
Okay.
And I thought I'd share one of them with you.
Oh boy. All right. Do it. Yeah. Okay. I'll allow it. Here I am trying to wrap up the episode.
I guess you can always cut it out of the end of the episode if you want, if it's that bad.
We'll see.
So, what does every Tickle Me Elmo get before it leaves the factory?
What does every Tickle Me Elmo get before it leaves the factory? I don't know.
2 test tickles.
Should we just roll the music right there? Is that it?
Yeah, probably.
All right, I'm out of here. That's enough of this.